back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. This is episode 446. Yes, folks, the episodes are flying. We've got my great co-host with me, Adrian, from Groundhog, and we've got a great guest as well. We've got Kris Hadlock from Wordherd as well. And we're going to be talking about everything around migrating from different platforms to another platform. And Kris runs a specialized company that deals with that day in. So I thought he would be the ideal guest to talk about this really interesting subject. First of all, Adrian, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners, the new listeners and viewers?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrian. I'm the CEO and founder of Groundhog. Here is the co-host for the WP-Tonic show. If you require any sort of CRM marketing, automation, email marketing, yada, 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 on your WordPress site as a plugin, then we're kind of the solution for you. And you can find out more about that at groundhog.io.
Yes, he's the good-looking one. So, and we've got our guest, Kris. Would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Absolutely. My name is Kris Hadlock. I'm the president and CTO of Wordherd, and we are a website migration company. We migrate any CMS to WordPress, and we also have an add-on CRM migration service.
That's great. And before going into the main part of the interview, folks, I'd like to talk about our major sponsor, which is Kinsta Hosting. Kinsta's been sponsoring the show for a couple of years. They also host the WP-Tonic website. Been totally blown away by the quality of their hosting and their support. They host on Google Cloud, one of the best virtual cloud hosting platforms on the market at the present moment, in my opinion. They've just recently introduced some upgrades, and they say, and I'm sure they're right, they've become 200% faster. It was some of the fastest hosting on the market. It's just got substantially a lot faster. If you're looking for a great platform for your learning management system, your WooCommerce, anything that needs a bit of real hosting performance, I suggest either for yourself or for your clients, you go over to Kinsta, have a look at their plans, buy one of them, and also tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. Now for the main part of the interview. So, Kris, you came on my radar and I looked at your website and your bio, and I thought you were the person to come on the show to talk about migration, because I have, in my own niche, which is learning management systems, we have a number of SaaS competitors like Kajabi, and I regularly get people that have found out that in the end, an enclosed SaaS system doesn't totally meet their needs, and they want to come to the freedom of WordPress. Then they find that Kajabi makes it pretty difficult to move. So we've done a few ourselves, and it has all been done manually. So maybe can you give a quick outline on some of the key platforms that you help people with to migrate into WordPress, and then maybe give us some things that people got to think about before they go down this path?
Sure. So our top platforms are Adobe Business Catalyst, HubSpot, Drupal, Joomla, and Typo3. But we can migrate any CMS into WordPress. We have different API connectors for some of the top platforms, and then we also can do a combination of scraping on custom sites that don't have those API connections. So we've developed a proprietary tool around this process, which we use in-house. And it's been said to save about 94% of the time over manual migration.
That's fantastic. So what are some of the key things that people got to realize before they approach somebody, or some of the things they got to understand before them that help you achieve a really successful migration?
Well, there's a lot of things to take into account when you migrate a site. It's not just the content, but it's all of the images and the assets. If you were to do that manually, you would need to download, re-upload, ensure all the SEO is intact, relink everything. So that's what our tool really helps with, and where it's its strength is. It can do all of that in an automated fashion. So yeah, the things that would need to be taken into account is just ensuring that all those images are relinked in the media library, all the SEO is intact for the images, the pages, the posts. 301 redirects are implemented if necessary, if any URLs change.
That's great. Over to you, Adrian.
So if someone's migrating, what kind of questions do you get? Like what is their key want from migrating from some other CMS? Because you usually do migrations from some other CMS to WordPress, right? So what are the reasonings for that?
It kind of varies. It depends on the platform. Sometimes it's that they're locked into a system that's got a high monthly recurring fee. Or with Adobe Business Catalyst, this platform is end of lifing in 2021. So we've partnered with WP Engine and Pressable to migrate sites from Adobe Business Catalyst into WordPress. And there's many people out there that are on that platform looking for this service. We actually just went through a year-long vetting process with WP Engine and Adobe, where they vetted our migration tool, and that's where those savings calculations were determined.
Wow. So, like, is there any like data loss associated with this migration, or is it kind of like, an all-in-one? You get to keep everything more or less structured in a way that you're familiar with, or is there a little bit of data loss, a lot of data loss? What can people expect?
No data loss and an exact theme match.
Really? So like,
yeah.
do you like build the theme custom, or how does that work?
Yeah, we have theme developers in-house that will recreate the theme, but we also have been toying with some technology that we call intelligent theming, which recreates the design and layouts in WP Bakery or Gutenberg. So it'll actually look at the structure of the page and recreate all of that in WordPress in an automated fashion.
That's pretty incredible, Jonathan.
Oh yeah, that's why I thought I'd have Kris on the show, because I was blown away. Now, Kris, I know I'm going to ask you a really difficult question, but maybe you can just give us a couple of examples if you want to. How much does this roughly cost then, Kris? Can you give some idea what it costs, on the couple of the most popular platforms that you regularly work with, and give us some very broad figures?
Well, I can give you an idea of what we base our pricing on. We base it on total number of pages and posts, the complexity of the design, and whether or not that needs to be recreated, whether the SEO needs to be remain intact, or if they don't really have SEO and they don't necessarily need that migrated. So like a very small brochure site would probably be between 500 and 1,000, and then sites beyond that would be higher.
Yeah, and I do understand, because that was a little slightly unfair question, but I'm sure it's a question that you're asked almost every day, isn't it?
I'd love to know the
Yes.
biggest migration.
Yeah,
Yes.
Absolutely. The largest migration we did was for Northern Arizona University, which is just right up the mountain from me. And it was a 250 microsite migration from Ectron, which is an enterprise platform, in a WordPress multi-site.
So they had like 250 various like properties on subdomains or subfolders or whatever, and you migrated all of that to a WordPress multi-site?
Exactly. Yeah, they're all different departments that are within the organization. So they needed different user roles and whatnot for access to different microsites.
I'm just curious, because I'm a developer techie person myself, and I'm kind of just curious, did you have to like build, did a lot of your, because you said you've been building this tool for a long time, I'm curious if that particular job spurred a lot of the innovation that you currently have in your platform. Were you already like ready to go with that one?
I would say that we were mostly ready to go, but they had some custom widgets that they used, different shortcodes.
Mm-hmm.
And within our tool, we have a place where you can actually write some additional code that goes into a virtual machine. So it doesn't actually touch the core logic, and we could write transformers that created shortcodes out of different widgets that we were coming across while we were processing.
Very cool. And I've done a few like website migrations myself, and it is bar none the most painful process on planet Earth for anybody, because I just gave up. I don't deal with staging. I don't deal with anything. Live changes that are just pushed to the live site because I'm lazy and don't know how to do it really, really well. But because the reason it's so difficult is because, as you're like making changes to your staging site or your development site or whatever, or you have migration, you have authors or you have payments or you have sales that are happening on the live site while you're making these changes. Now, and the then pulling that over is like a super process because it takes time to do that, usually maybe a month or a couple of weeks. And by that time, your live instance is further ahead in terms of iterations than the one that you're working on. So how long does this process actually take in order to kind of narrow that gap in order to ensure that there's almost no change in between the time where you're switching over from your kind of like your old platform to your new platform?
Our typical content migration is scheduled for about 2 weeks, and that's based on the size of our team and our workload.
Mm-hmm.
So we usually ask for a consent freeze. It's not necessarily for the entire 2 weeks, but when we're going to actually do the migration, which could take a day, could take 2 days, depending on the size of the site.
Right. So basically you just put a lock on it. Like, all right, you're not allowed to like create sales orders, whatnot within this time frame so that, when we do the migration, like everything's hunky-dory.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's obviously not possible, especially on a site where people are selling things. So if we're doing a WooCommerce migration, then we just try to launch the site quickly after we migrate. And then anything that's left over, we kind of move at the last minute.
Okay, so you kind of just like have someone like log into the old place and like grab the last little few orders and pop them over when you're ready.
Exactly.
Very cool. Jonathan?
Yeah.
So, Kris, have you found in general that a lot of enclosed systems, not open source, do you feel that they make it difficult to migrate to something else?
Some do. Others just simply don't have the APIs that are necessary to make it seamless. But that's why our tool was originally built on scraping technology, so that we can migrate based on a sitemap and just target certain areas of a site and grab the content and images and whatnot from that direction.
All right. That's great. I think we're going to go for our break. We're going to be talking about the whole area in a bit more detail in the second half, folks. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. We've got a real expert on the show talking about an area that's not talked about that much. But like I say, Kris Hadlock is the expert, the head of Wordherd. And we're talking about migrating, to WordPress, which is a great idea, I feel. So, Kris, what about WooCommerce? You mentioned it a bit in the first half with my co-host Adrian. Are you getting a lot of people looking at moving away from SaaS kind of e-commerce, looking at WooCommerce?
Yeah, we get a combination of CMSs and different e-commerce platforms as well. So I would say CMSs are our top migrations, and then e-commerce would be second up.
So which ones are they looking to move away from to go into WordPress or WooCommerce?
The typical Shopify, BigCommerce, Magento.
I'm fascinated because now Shopify is really kind of those that really push it. And don't get me wrong, I have done some Shopify development myself. It's seen as such a great alternative to WooCommerce. Why do people? Is it very similar to what you said in the first half, cost? But what are some of the reasons you come across why they're moving from Shopify to WooCommerce?
I would say that the main reason is cost, and And then just second to that would probably be just having an open source platform where they can easily design. They're more used to WordPress and the themes that it offers.
Right. Over to you, Adrian.
So I see that, and we talked a little bit about it. I think you have you do, or at least we were talking about earlier before the call. You do about 30% or 30% of your overall like migrations are for CRMs. That's correct, right?
Yeah, I would say that's about true.
Okay. So what are the difficulties that people generally experience while switching their CRM? Are there any things that people should be looking at? Because 50% of, and I run a CRM based business, marketing automation, email marketing, etc. And I can solidly say that a good portion of our customers are switchers. Switchers being they jump from place to place to place, trying to figure out the CRM and the marketing automation tool that fits their needs. What are some of the most common points of interest or things that people that you've switched CRMs for need to consider before deciding to make the leap to go from software A to software B and possibly beyond that?
That's a great question. I mean, I would say that they need to consider what it is exactly that they're looking for out of the new CMS or CRM. I mean, if they're looking like specifically with HubSpot, which we get a lot of migrations for, they're wanting to migrate their CRM and their CMS because they're closely tied together. So one of the things that we often need to account for is that CRM customers or users are being tracked within WordPress. So that's one example of that.
So so are you talking about people moving to HubSpot or away from HubSpot?
If they're moving away from HubSpot, one of the things that they need to do is just ensure that that tracking is still in place.
Right. And so how do you, I'm curious. So what if they're moving away from HubSpot, what are they moving to offer that sort of like that best relationship with WordPress?
There's quite a few systems out there that we migrate to, but none of them integrate with WordPress seamlessly. Some of them that I could name are like SharpSpring, ActiveCampaign, some people just move to MailChimp, which doesn't really lend that tracking capability.
Okay, very cool. Jonathan?
He needs to know about Groundhog, doesn't he? You better have a phone, better have a chat together, and you. So, do you find everything what is the kind of spread of clients that approach you? Are they mostly is it medium-sized businesses and large organizations that approach you when you're dealing with IT professional, or do you have a very broad amount of inquiries from different people? And secondly, do you have to really explain to them that even with your great custom tools, this isn't going to be totally a simple exercise? Does there have to be a fair bit of education involved?
When we first started out, it was very broad, and we have really been working over the past year or two to hone in on businesses. We work a lot with agencies as add-on service to what they're providing to their customers. We also work with a lot of SEO firms, and it's helpful when companies know exactly what's involved in the process, or they have some kind of experience in CMSs.
They've got the arrows in their back already.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're focused primarily on small to large business. Right.
Because do you find with the people outside what you just described, they think that you can do this very quickly and very cheaply? Is that basically the problem?
Yeah, I think they're looking more for like a plugin that just automates the entire process, and they just basically go in there and push a button for $50, and and it's over. But we look at this as a larger process, and we ensure that everything is intact. You don't lose any SEO equity, and that your design is an exact match, and that your content is editable in a way where you don't have to know HTML in the end.
Right. Over to you, Adrian.
How much manual work is actually expected let's just take, your kind of middle of the road migration. It's not as big as your largest client, but it's certainly not as small as your smallest client, like kind of middle of the road. How much manual work is actually expected, and do you take care of it, or is that on the business to take care of it? What's the distribution?
We take on the entire load, unless they decide that they want to implement a theme when we're done. But we'll take on the entire load, and it's all automated except for the theme at this point, and that's what we've been working with the intelligent theming.
Very cool. Very, very, very cool.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned a few times HubSpot, and I've got to be frank, I don't expect you to agree with what I'm just going to say. I think HubSpot are fantastic marketers. I've got to put that, they've managed. I've spoken to a few people that after the kind of marketing magic has worn off, the actual reality of the HubSpot platform hasn't been that inspiring. Is that what you sense why a lot of people have been approaching you to drop HubSpot and go to something more open source?
I personally think that HubSpot is a fantastic platform. I think that one of the reasons that people leave is that it's being underutilized. Maybe they don't have somebody full-time to manage the marketing aspects of their
It's really only worth it if
company.
You have someone consistently looking at the metrics, looking at the reports, making the decisions, watching your KPIs, editing the emails, creating the campaigns, doing the tracking. And if you're a small business owner and you're kind of like a 2-3 person operation, you generally are wearing several different hats, and you don't necessarily have the capacity to be that full-time person looking in HubSpot, making the fairly, expensive $1,000 a month worth it. So at least from my experience, because I've migrated a few people away from HubSpot manually, I might add, which is not fun by any stretch of the imagination. But it generally just comes down to, and they'll even tell you, it's just underutilization and the price. If you can't make the $1,000 worth it, then they'd rather pay, $50 for something that just doesn't do as much, but it's enough for them to do what it is that they wanted in the first place.
That's kind of very linked to some of the presentations you've done, isn't it, Adrian? That it's like, I think that what you just said is so true, isn't it? And thanks for pointing that out, because I don't think I was making that clear, because I actually think it's a pretty good platform, but it can do so much, and it's a bit overkill, isn't it, for the average medium-sized business, isn't it?
Yeah, that's like it's really good if you have a marketing team, or like a marketing agency who's doing like almost full-time work for you to go in, set it up, manage it, and look at the tracking, look at the KPIs, looking at the reports, and then making modifications to your business based on that stuff. But if you don't have that person, you're not logging in every day, and you're just not looking at it, it's really hard to justify the cost in your mind, even though that if you focused on it and you implemented it properly, that it would be worth it. If you're not doing that, then it's just not. And there are other tools out there that are cheaper that can do like maybe like 50% or 60% of what HubSpot does, but at a drastically reduced price. And those are often enough to satisfy the business owner and to do the things, send the emails, do the tracking, and, have some of the reports that they offer, but without, looking at your credit card bill and being, oh my God.
Yeah. So you also, Kris, you mentioned that you have people from other open source platforms, Joomla, Drupal. Have you got any sense why those people want to move to WordPress?
A lot of, I think historically, a lot of companies were sold on Drupal as an enterprise platform. There's not a lot of developers out there for it. And it's just not really not really the case anymore. I think WordPress has really grown a lot over the years, and it rivals Drupal in many ways. And there's many developers out there that know the platform. So that's why I think a lot of enterprises are seeing the light and moving to WordPress. Same with Joomla. Joomla is just, was really popular for a while. And it's a fine platform, but again, there's not a lot of developers out there, not a lot of support. And I think that that's the main reason people are wanting to move from that.
I've got another question. Well, let's wrap up the podcast part of the show, and I'll give you my other question in the bonus content. So, Kris, what's the best way to get hold of you and learn more about your company?
You could visit our website at wordherd.io. And you could use any of our platform landing pages to submit a free an inquiry for a free quote, or you could just use our contact form to simply contact us.
That's great. And Adrian, how do people find out more about you and what you're up to? Oh, you're mute, I think.
I was muted. No worries there. So if you're looking for a CRM marketing automation tool that does rival HubSpot, but as a WordPress plugin, so it's all nice and integrated and in one place, then you can go to groundhog.io and download our free plugin off the WordPress repository, or you can get a premium plan and get some awesome extra features, advanced email editor, drag and drop funnels, and all of that good stuff. And again, you can go to groundhog.io to find out more about that.
And if you're looking to get to the freedom of WordPress around your course developer, designer, implementer, and you're looking for the freedom of WordPress, come to WP-Tonic and we can integrate everything with Groundhog, and you'll be happy bunny. And also, if you want to really support the show, go to iTunes and give us a review. It really does help the show. We'll be back next week with another great guest. And we'll see you soon, folks. Bye. So, Kris, I'm dealing with a customer now. We're actually not doing the migration part, but we're helping in some other aspects. It's a large organization, and they built a WordPress site. And they did it themselves using a theme and WP Bakery, and the whole site is just got posts and pages filled with short codes. And now they got a top designer, digital design house, to build them a fantastic site in Gutenberg, with Gutenberg. And now we're in the middle of trying to transfer all the pages and posts over, strip all the WP Bakery shortcodes and put it all in Gutenberg. Is this something you deal with as well?
Yeah, we actually have added a service just this past year to migrate to Gutenberg. So it converts WP Bakery and other builders into Gutenberg blocks.
This is an automatic tool, is it? Semi-automatic?
Yeah, it is. I would say semi-automatic. We've used it on a couple projects that are in production now, and we're continuing to develop it.
So, do you mind if I don't want you to spill trade secrets, but how for God's sake, how does it work then?
Basically, crawling the pages and reading the different shortcodes and understanding what they need to be converted into, what the equivalents are in Gutenberg, or other editors for that matter.
Right. It's amazing, really. Adrian, over to you.
So someone looked at, and went through and got a list and compiled a list of all of the different shortcodes. And all right, this maps to here with this data. This maps to here with this data. Oh my God. I wouldn't want to be the guy who had to do that. Did you do that? Are you the guy?
I am the primary developer on it. Yeah.
So you spent 7 days, 2 weeks? How long did it take?
It's
map all of them.
Yeah, I mean, we already have our migration process in place. So determining those maps, probably about a month or so. There's a lot of different attributes and blocks and whatnot that you need to take into account.
Because I see like, I'm not sure if you're part of any of like the big Facebook groups for Elementor, WP Bakery, Aveda, etc. There's a lot of, for example, in the Aveda one, they have their theme fusion builder, which is like their proprietary builder, which is kind of like WP.
Lovely, 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 lovely.
And I see posts in there that like, hey, listen, I have this Aveda site, but I want to migrate to Elementor. Is there a plugin that will do that for me? Are we going to see, a tool for those people in that group anytime soon? Or does it already exist?
It's something that we would take on, but it's not something that we actually are doing at the moment. Right. So we're always interested in innovating and adding additional migration capabilities. But we focused initially on migrating to Gutenberg from other builders.
But WP Bakery to Gutenberg is now available.
It is.
That's awesome. All righty.
So I think we initially also discussed, I'll occasionally get a client that's with Kajabi or some other priority learning management system, and they want to go either into LearnDash or Lift LMS. Especially, I've had 2 to 3 people that are in the clutches of Kajabi. Is that something that you would do? That you think you could modify your tools to deal with, or is that such a load of work that you really got to build something special if you were handling something like Kajabi?
It's something we'd definitely be interested in looking into. I actually have e-learning experience. I was a Flash action script developer for an e-learning company.
Yeah, that's how
for many years. Okay. And yeah, I worked a lot with LMSs. I knew all the restrictions and whatnot that went in place with those. So, so yeah, I would have a good understanding of how to move from one to the other.
Yeah, that's because they don't really spell out because there is a really nightmare. Well, I think we're going to wrap up the show now. Thanks, Kris, for coming on. I think it's been educational. It probably people just don't realize that how complicated, which you help deal with. Really, that's the
complicated no more.
Complicated no more. You deal with the pain, don't you?
Yeah, we do.
All right, that's great. We're going to wrap it up now, folks, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.